So last week we stumbled into Feminine Rage, and then this week I saw TikTok and I was like, you know what? Let's keep it fucking going. Let's go with the Changeling, 2008. I feel like it won some Academy Awards. Did you know it was directed by Clint Eastwood?
I didn't know anything about this movie going in.
Okay.
So the movie is Changeling
Yeah.
with what's her name? Angela.
Jolie,
What is it?
the goddess.
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie.
Yes.
Sexual awakening with
She
that
just
one.
looks ethereal. Every time I see her in a movie, I forget. It's like I
She can't go
forget.
wrong.
I forget what she looks like until I see her like in a movie, and then I'm like, you're like literally
Just
so ethereal.
perfection. Yeah. So, and she did an amazing, and she's a great actress too. She's
So
definitely
good.
like more than her look. So, this movie, we come in on, for a second I was like, oh shit, it's gonna be black and white, but it didn't stay black and white. But you're in a nice
I
little
know.
neighborhood.
I thought I hit the wrong movie because there's one from like the 60s or something. There's an older one, and I thought I picked the wrong one at first.
And we're coming in at 1928, and I want to say it said March, but I didn't write that down. And it's a cute little suburban neighborhood, little middle classy. First thing in the morning, and she's waking up and waking her boy up, and what I thought was weird, immediately measuring him. And then I wanted to be like, how often are you measuring him? Is this an every morning thing? So I feel like it's unnecessary to measure your child literally every morning. And then giving her breakfast. They ride the trolley to school. Oh, it's in LA, by the way. And they ride the trolley to school, which I thought was cool. But then when she got off the trolley, I was very much like, no trolley would wait for you. Like, you're getting left behind on the bus, on whatever. If you get off the bus, kiss your kid, wave him goodbye, watch him walk into the school, and then turn around and get back on the bus. And then have the nerve to look at her watch too, like, might be late for work. Bitch, you're holding up the entire system.
Right.
So then
That's why I was so confused why it stopped like literally directly in front of the school. I was like,
right in
is
front of
this
the
a
school.
scheduled stop? I was
Well,
very confused. That's
honest,
unsafe.
I was like, I had to keep telling myself, this is 1928. It is an incredibly different time.
Well, it's
So
also a
I
movie,
was
so
like,
like suspend
that
suspend your
too.
disbelief. Or
That too. I
suspend
was
belief,
like,
whatever
I'm
it is.
probably not going to Google this, but I will also just go with it's 1920. They did a lot of things different. So then she works at a telephone company as a it looks like
Cable
she's a
girl.
manager. Yeah. But it looks
Yeah,
like
she's
she's
a cable girl.
yeah.
Yeah, I think she was like a supervisor.
And they get to roll around on roller skates, which I was like,
I know.
badass.
That's
Who
so
got rid of
smart.
that system? That is a great system. I want roller skates.
I'm sure the invention of workman's comp got rid of that pretty
Well,
quickly.
probably, those pesky
Because
skates. Fucking
I would bust
OSHA
my ass.
had to be created.
I would bust my ass.
I would bust my ass, but God, it would be so much fun. Talk about perking up your work week when you get to strap some puppies on and just go woo down the hall. Like, so then, so yeah, they show her like obviously she's a supervisor, she's taking calls, she's picking her son up from school, and he's like, I got in a fight, and she was like, well, did you hit him back? And he was like, yeah, and she's like, good. Never start a fight, but always finish one. And I was like, classic tip. Classic parenting tip. And then he goes, well, I hit him first. And she's like, hey, why'd you hit him? And he's like, well, he said my dad hates me. So, and then she explains to him that you never even met your dad, so how can he hate you? And he was like, well, what happened to my dad? And she was like, well, and I did think it was a very cute way to explain your dad was a piece of shit. You didn't want to take responsibility. She was like, the day you were born, we got a package called responsibility, and that scares people. And I was like, you know what? That's real nice. And little Walter
age appropriate, I guess.
is age appropriate. You aren't you are shitting on the dad, but in a high level way that he won't pick up on that.
Right.
But the kid was very like, well, that's dumb. And she was like, radio, bud. And they're talking about going to the movies and stuff. And then a couple days later, she gets a call and they're like, pretty much, can you come into work? And she's like, I'm supposed to take my kid to the movies. And they're like, just stay till 4. And she's like, okay. And you're like, single mom, gotta get those bucks. I get it. And then she has to tell Walter, hey, I promise, we'll go to the movies tomorrow and we'll go to the boardwalk. But I gotta go to work right now. So there's a sandwich in the refrigerator, and the neighbor will check on you. And he's like, neighbors don't need to check on me. I am not afraid of anything. I am just fine. And she's like, yeah, they're checking on the house. And I feel brave guy. So, and I was like,
he's like
from
8,
a different
right?
time. He's 9.
Like 8, 9.
He's
yeah,
9.
No, you're
different
out of
times.
fucking
mind. And such different times that not only did she leave her son by himself at 9, which I think depending on the kid maybe, but not like all day. Not I don't know. But I will say,
I left my brother at home alone at 9 for a year one time, and he almost burnt the entire microwave trying to make toast inside of it.
For a year?
No, an hour.
Oh, you said a year. You're like, I left my brother for
an hour,
and he burnt toast. I was like, what do you mean you left your
brother? No, an hour. An hour, and he almost fucked the entire microwave up because he thought he could put like just bread in there into a microwave, not a toaster oven, a microwave, and just heat it up, and it would somehow turn into toast. My dad was so mad at me.
Yeah, my brother,
like, no way.
I didn't get in trouble for this because I had already moved out. Luckily, my brother's way younger than me, but he almost burnt down the house when he put one of those little microwavable mac and cheeses in for almost 2 hours. And then went to his room and didn't check the microwave ever because he's ADHD. And that bitch caught fire. Like, my dad had to run in and be like, oh my God. So anyways, but what I noticed, which I was like, okay, even if you are like, hey, single moms, gotta work, sometimes latchkey kids happen. She didn't even close the door when she left, though. You notice that? Because my parents, when I did get left alone, would be like, you don't go near this door, you don't go near the windows, lock everything. She was just like, hey, if you're gonna play outside, and see you later. And I was like,
yeah, and this is LA. They're in fucking LA. They're not out in the sticks or anything.
Exactly. They're in the suburbs, but yeah. So she's at work and she's clearly like looking at her watch, like, okay, I gotta get home. But she's working, and then she's running outside, like, okay, I'm done. Let's get home. And the boss, like, and I thought this was a little bit fucked up. Because I feel like you should have known she rides the bus, but she sees the bus and she's trying to run to it, and her boss is like, hey, conversation, I want to promote you. And she's like, cool, tomorrow.
Monday, Monday, please.
And then, so he sees her clearly in a hurry, running towards this bus that's leaving her, and he's just like, that lady. Like, doesn't even have a like, oh my God, hey, did I call? Let me give you a ride. Like, nothing. He just like, oh, what's her name? Catherine, something like that. Oh, yeah. Oh, Kathy, silly her, and like walks up like, I was like, what a dick. So then she does end up coming home. It's definitely late, but not like dark. It was like very dusky. Yeah. And she's like, Walter screaming for him, checks the fridge, sandwich is still in it. She's like, fuck, you could tell the worry is happening, which I rightfully so. I would be panicked at this point. She goes outside, she's calling for him. She sees some girls. She's like, have you seen him? They're like, no. She's walking around. It's nighttime now. They show her walking around the neighborhood. So like she's been at this for a while, and she hears some kids laughing, and she's like, Walter, and she runs over, and he's not with them either. So now you're like, oh my God, Walter's been fucking taken. So then she goes home and calls the police, and the police, of course, tell her, he probably ran away. Call us back in 24 hours. I hate that so much.
It's just fucking ACAB, man. Every time I see police in a movie, it just solidifies. Because it's not wrong.
LAPD, they're like, them and NYPD are like the kings of
Yeah,
corruption. Like,
right,
so,
right.
so yeah, I was just sitting there like, fucking amen. First of all, you never even asked her child's age. She only got out for a 9-year-old. You think the 9-year-old just up and ran away? Like, what the fuck? I hate that. I hate that, and I hate that whole 24-hour rule is still getting thrown at people to this day.
And it's not true. It's not legal.
It's not.
It,
These are
it's
just
not.
individual departments doing this shit
Yeah.
arbitrarily. Like,
Yeah, just because they don't want to fucking do any work or any
yeah.
paperwork or anything. That's it. That's all they're
And I'm just
doing.
like, I just don't understand it. I do get not having resources, but I cannot help but feel like it has got to be better to be like, yeah, we find 99% of the kids when we immediately act. I've only ever saved one, than it being, hey, we never react and a child died because of it. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, that becomes a larger conversation about what the police force in America is actually for, because it's not actually for any kind of deterrent
well,
or
clearly.
any kind of helpfulness to the average person. So, like, yeah, it's unsurprising. And I'm curious, I wonder what the status of like runaways was back then, because now even if a kid is a runaway, like they're still looking for them. Like they still want to find them to a certain extent depending on
I
like
don't want to,
geographical location and like,
yeah,
but I wonder like what the idea, because that's a general theme through this whole money movie of like runaways or kids claiming to be orphans or what have you, and everyone just kind of accepts that. Everyone's just like, oh, okay, like it's an everyday part of life. And now I'm like,
I feel like, okay,
I,
I don't want to speak totally because this would be very, like, I'm pretty sure I remember from college, but this was a time in America and England, really, where, like, we weren't in the Great Depression yet, but it was getting a
right,
little
heading
dicey
there.
by this point. You still in, there wasn't really like a social services that, like, people were able just
No,
to sell kids. You were able just to be like, yeah, I just don't want you. So now you're a kid on the street. You know what I mean? Like,
right,
there weren't any laws to protect children. If anything, it was
right.
like, oh, go work in the fucking factory, or they were being put to
That's
work and
true.
shit. So yeah, I think there
That's
were
true.
like, it's like
A
children were almost like
blase.
dogs. Like, you had street dogs back then, you had street kids too. And then, like, as we
Yeah, that
got more
makes sense.
educated, we stopped doing that for a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there's certain countries like Russia. There's been tons of documentaries done on street kids in Russia from like the aughts. So like I know that still exists, but it just seems so foreign to me. I could
It
never
does.
imagine like having like an 8-year-old like walk up to me like a strange kid and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm an orphan." And me just being like, "Okay."
Cool. Cool. Yeah.
Like what the fuck?
Yeah, definitely.
Like even the
Um,
kids in our own neighborhood that ride Firefly's bus, like one of them I literally stand on the street and watch him to make sure he's walking, like getting to his house okay. Like I can't imagine
yeah.
just seeing like a
Oh
random
yeah.
child and just being like, "Oh, all right."
That's for you. Like,
Jesus Christ.
oh yeah. So bad. So
Anyway,
anyway, fuck, where were we?
she
Uh
calls the police.
oh yeah, calls the police. They're fucking useless, of course. Um
And then we time jump, don't we?
yes, so then it goes to 2 weeks. Um and it starts in a church. So this is where you have a pastor. And for a second I'm like, are you a pastor? Because he starts with like, this has been 2 weeks and we need to pray for the boy. And then all of a sudden you see he has a mic in front of him and he's like, because fuck the LAPD and those corrupt motherfuckers. Like, he just starts going entirely nuts.
Yeah.
Like, wait, is he a politician? Like, for a second I was confused. I
Who
was
is
like,
this?
he's a pastor. I think he's a pastor because I'm pretty sure that's his church. And he is. He's a pastor. But he has his own like radio show, I guess, and he's railing against the LAPD. And you see a scene, like, so you hear his radio broadcast, the chief of police is listening to it as people are outside his window being like, fuck you, LAPD. And he's like, okay, we gotta fucking do something. So
Fucking
then
asshole.
it jumps to April 3rd, and you see her at work well, she's like walking around her house lonely. She's at work, and then she's like on her break calling other cities, just like Las Vegas. Have you seen a boy that's, I'll call back in a week, and all that good stuff. So then it jumps to, you're in a completely different city. We're in Illinois now, July. So it's been like a month since, he disappeared on March 10th.
April. So March, April, May, June, July,
Yeah.
5 months. Yeah.
So now we're 5 months later, and you see a man and a boy at a diner in Illinois, and it's a dusty old diner area. And the man's like, oh shit, I forgot my wallet. And the guy's like, fuck you, pay me or I'm calling cops. He's like, I'll leave my kid sitting here. I just have to go with money. And the guy's like, all right, fine. And then it's like 10 hours later. And he's like,
yeah.
hey. And what I love about this, because it's like clearly very small town, he's like, hey, Carol, go ahead and send Sheriff Steve over here to the diner. Like, you called Carol, not just I called 911. Gotta call Carol, get Sheriff over here. Like,
well, they have one phone line in that town. That's it. Yeah, that's all they got.
For sure. So, and I was like, dang, he just abandoned his kid like that. So then all of a sudden you're back at her. She's at work, and she looks over, and it's clearly officers and an investigator are there. And like, she's like, oh shit, like, they're here to tell me the ultimate bad news. And he comes up and like, we found you, he's alive. And then she's like sobbing and stuff, because who wouldn't fucking sob, like finding the kids alive. And so she's getting to the station, and she's like, shit, there's a lot of people here. And he's like, everyone likes a happy ending. And they're at the train station. And I love how the chief is like, so I'm sure you'll tell everybody how awesome we are. And she's like looking behind him like, I just want to get my kid, but sure,
I could not care less.
Fucking friendly enough, thanks. And she runs around them, and I love when she like ditches him. The guy's like, fucking, the chief's looking at the other guy like fucking rude, and the captain's like, women, like,
Jesus,
what? Yeah, how dare she not know how to control herself while you're trying to like make sure you give
farm her out.
Yeah, like, come on. So she gets up to the train, and you're like, yeah, and the little boy steps off, and she's like, that's
who the fuck are you?
Not my kid. And the captain's like, so they had the press back and to give them space, and the captain's like, no, this is you're just traumatized, this is your kid. And she's like, that's not my kid. And he's like, no, seriously, it's your son. He's been through trauma, you just don't recognize him, but it's yours. And she's like, no. And he's like, a lot of people went through a lot of work. If he's not yours in a couple days, maybe let me know, but he's yours. And you just like feel the innuendo of like, claim him right fucking now, or there's gonna be a problem. And she's like sitting there, and she's like, okay, give it a couple days. And he's like, great, send the press over. And everyone's taking her picture. Yeah, with the boy. And she's just like, what the fuck's happening? And in this moment, I was just like, great. And if you're like, well, what's the kid saying? The kid's saying, I'm Walter. Hi, mommy. And
yeah,
I was like, fucking, could you?
And like nothing else. He's saying like nothing else.
Oh, like, no, he's saying the very basics of what would have been in the paper. Like, he's not saying anything pertinent. And the guy's like, does he see? He knows you.
And he's not excited. He's not excited. Like, I can't imagine.
He's fucking creepy.
Yeah, he's like,
hi, mommy.
Don't
like,
face.
Yeah. But just, could you imagine this? Just as a mother, your child was missing. They bring you another child, and that child's going, it's me, mommy. And everyone's like, we found your child. You're the crazy one. I honestly, in that position, probably would have been the same way of being like, oh, okay. Like, I could not imagine how insane I would fucking feel to have the whole world and another child calling me mommy and being like, have I gone to another dimension? Like, I would just feel so stunned and like out of it. I'd be like,
I would have freaked the fuck out right there, right then and there.
Yeah.
In front of God and everybody, I would have freaked the fuck out.
That probably would have been the better way to react, because this
who knows?
would bite her in the butt later.
Well, whatever else what they've done, what they do the rest of the movie, who knows if it wouldn't have just happened a little bit sooner.
Well,
like,
honestly, you have to think about it. Like, if she would have at that moment in front of the press, because that was the whole thing, is that they could keep spinning things on her with the press because everything's happening behind closed doors. If she would have in that moment turned to the press and like, not my kid, I'm out of here, they could fuck with her, but they'd have to be real careful because the press already has the story, you know, like it would be real obvious.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Yeah, she should have flipped the fuck out.
You should flip the fuck out. Though my natural response would be definitely fawning, and it just made me uncomfortable even to watch. I was like, oh my god, I would feel insane. I would feel insane very easily.
I would have started asking that child random ass questions. Random ass, like, what's your middle name?
I don't know. Like, even in that
when
moment,
is your birthday?
I may have been able, if he was like, mommy, it's me, I'd be like, oh yeah, when's your birthday? And see, or be like, what's your favorite fucking color? Like, who's your uncle? Like,
something.
Give me names.
Anything.
What's your teacher's name? What school do you go to? Like, in that moment. And then be like, see, not my kid. It's not my kid. Like, so anyways, so she's like, okay, we're going home, I guess. And she takes him home. The fucking cops. That's all I wrote down. Fucking cops. So she's obviously like uncomfortable around this kid, like, what's happening? And she's like, well, you're dirty, so let's take it back. And she's giving him his privacy. She's putting his pajamas in the room, but he slips and falls, and she hears him, and she runs in there like, oh my god, are you okay? And he's standing there, and she realizes, she goes, you're uncircumcised, or you're
no, you're circumcised.
Yeah, so
you're circumcised. Walter is not.
Walter's not circumcised. And she ran out, and that would be the first time she calls the captain.
Yeah, and I think she also takes him to the wall where she was doing the measurements and like puts him up against the wall.
She made him get dressed, and then
where the mark is.
Yep, slaps him against the wall, and she's like, you're like 3 inches shorter. And I was like, dang. And so she calls the captain, and he's like, you're being hysterical, pretty much. Like, we said he's been through trauma. So, and she's like, trauma shrinks you? It fucking explain. And he's like, you just measure wrong. And you're just like, oh my god.
How do you measure wrong standing up against
a silly woman could figure it out, you know, like, Jesus. So and what's worse, and he can hear that he's sitting at the dinner table hearing her on the phone going, this is not my child. It's not my child. This is a child, and he's safe here, but it's not my child. As the cop is just like, okay, I'll send help, right, to kind of like placate her, but not really placate her. He ends up, okay, so she gets off the phone, and the kid stands up. He's like, I'm done with dinner. And he goes, night, mommy, and causes her to like throw a plate against the wall. I was like, you little shit.
She's freaking the fuck out.
You little piece of shit.
Yeah, what a little asshole.
Like, you know she's upset. You know she wants her son, and you don't even have the fucking decency to at least keep your fucking mouth shut and go to bed. Like, you know what you're fucking doing, you little shit. So
at this point in the movie, I was feeling a little crazy. I was like when I first saw him and her reaction to him, and I was like, something's off. And then she went through all of this, and I was like, okay, I don't think so. Like, I didn't know what to think. I was like, because I never watched the movie before. I was like, is that her son? Is she just causing like an insane amount of trauma, and he's having a weird reaction, and like she's misremembering things or something? Like, I couldn't figure out what the fuck was going on. But the moment he said it's because he's so like straight faced, and like there's no warmth, there's no like feeling of any kind of relationship that he's giving off. He's such a bad little, like, he's a good actor for the movie, but he's intentionally a bad actor to make you feel like so uncomfortable that I was like, no, it's wrong. Something is wrong.
Yes, it definitely, you get the feeling for sure. Like, so she ends up going into the room a little while later and apologizing, saying, it's not fair I yelled at you. I know you're just a child, but you know, and I know that you are not my son. So please, they're not going to keep looking for him if you keep lying. Please tell the truth, and we'll talk in the morning. And then it goes, the pastor. Oh, so then a doctor shows up, and she's like, okay, so see, he's 3 inches shorter, and she's trying to explain, but all the while she's explaining these things, the doctor is very clearly like with the LAPD. He's just there to like, shut up. Seriously, shut up. Like,
Yes.
so,
And he
and he's
literally
like,
tells her that trauma does weird things to the
yeah.
body
And
when
she's
she
like,
brings up like the height.
yeah, he's like, his spine could have condensed. I was like, 3 inches, motherfucker? Really?
In 5 months,
Really?
just
Right.
he would be in undeniable pain.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
out of here.
And then she's like, well, he's circumcised. And he's like, well, there's some sick fuckers out there. He was probably with a sick fucker. And I was like, he would be so fucking scarred. There would be, that's still an easy way, even if that is easy to say, well, anyone can uncircumcise a boy. Sure, bud. Pull those pants down and show me how there would not be a hellacious fucking scar there. Of some dude just fucking doing it in a hotel room. You know what I mean? Like, there's, like, come on, get serious right now. So, so then the pastor calls her and is like, have you read the New York Times this morning? And she's like, no. And he's like, well, you should, and then come by my church. And I'm just like, you don't know this woman. You didn't even say like hi or anything. You're just like,
yeah, it was so weird.
Right? It's so, and she just like, okay. And she goes to his office, and they had the doctor who went to help her pretty much saying, hey, the boy is going through trauma and stuff, and not getting better under her care. And like the pastor was pointing out, he's like, they're clearly trying to flip the script on you to make it look like you're the one harming this boy, and this is your son, and you're probably
and he goes on this
battle.
He goes on this big long rant about how awful.
Yeah. And he talks about how they
is.
hired when the, not the general, but the big guy at the top of the cop.
The chief?
Yes, the chief. The chief, when he first got elected into his position, hired a 50-man hit squad pretty much. And he's accusing him of hiring that hit squad to take out the competition, because they're just as corrupt. So now they just run the whole gamut on all crime in the city. And she's like, look, man, I just want my kid back. I don't want to fight your fucking
I think they played like one of his press conferences when he first got elected or was running for election, where he was talking about wiping out all the crime. So he like put a Tommy gun in every officer's hands, and there's like scenes of them just wiping out people.
Because he said, don't bring them in at all. Like, that was
right. Don't bring them in alive.
Just don't bring them in at all. Don't bring them in alive. I want them dead.
Just put bodies out.
Pretty much a
then, of course,
shoot people on the street.
Yeah, but then of course, because they're all corrupt, instead they started taking bribes from certain people in certain groups. So not only did they just kill a bunch of people, but then they also are bought and paid for by certain criminal activities in the whole area. So it's like a twofold, like,
and this is why
or die.
And this is why the pastor is railing against them, and most of LA is clearly pissed with them because of this clearly insane corrupt issue happening.
Right.
So
and she's like, also, I don't give a shit about any of that. I literally just want my son back.
Cool story, bro. I just want my kid back. I don't want to be a part of this at all. And he's like, well, that's cute. But they're fucking coming for you. So you either need to sit down, shut up, and accept that new kid in your house, or you're gonna have to go to battle and watch your fucking back. Because they've already pretty much set up like, this police force is highly prideful, and you're embarrassing them right now. And they are gonna come for you for fucking doing that. So where was I? Fucking cop. Oh yeah, so then she goes to the captain again, and this scene, oh boy. Oh, this scene made me so
full precinct. Yeah, she walks into a full precinct, just walks straight back, and just yells.
Yeah, and she starts yelling at him, I want my kid, that's not my kid. She's like, he's shorter. He's he's
Yeah, and then she just
so
screams,
the pastor,
this one is circumcised. Like,
Yeah.
and the whole room goes quiet and they all get so uncomfortable. And I'm like, bro,
Yeah. So
that's your line?
Oh,
Yeah, and I think the
I feel like
pastor
I've
is
mixed
there.
this up, but like the pastor had told her, you need to have your ducks in a row, because if you want to keep pursuing your child the way you are, you're gonna. So she goes to a dentist, and the dentist is like, yeah, your kid had this thing with his teeth. This kid doesn't. That's not your fucking kid. I'll put that in writing. She goes to his teacher. And the teacher's like, that's not fucking Walter. What's my name? And he's like, I don't remember. And she's like, go to your seat. He doesn't go to the right sign. She's like, that ain't fucking Walter. I'll go to a fucking judge for you for it. And she's like, great. And she goes to the captain and she's like, I have even more proof. This is not my fucking kid. And the captain pretty much closes his door and he's like, you are fucking bum. You just don't want to be a mother. You've had 5 months to be a fucking harlot and now you don't want your fucking responsibility. You got a kid. Either take care of it or, I mean, just calling her a piece of shit. And it made me so mad because she gets to a point where she's sobbing and she's like, she stops fighting and she has to like take a deep breath and be like, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to, like, it starts soothing his ego. And I know that feeling so well of having to be like, I see I'm getting to a point with a man and that's about to get violent or something and have to be like, hey, bud, let's talk, and it just makes me want to scream. I hate how we are so trained to change our whole attitude in the way we talk to soothe a man's pride before they harm us in some way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
because
or
it's
to even
literally
try to get the right thing done, because that's all that's happening.
right.
He's being so prideful because he can't be wrong. There's no way. Something's wrong with you that you don't know your own child. You're an emotional mess. I'm right. You're wrong. Stop arguing with me, And it was just like, oh, it made me so fucking mad. It made me so mad.
Yeah.
It made me hurt for her so hard that she's willing to do anything. She's willing to change her tone. You want her to say something, she'll say it. Just please go find her son. Like, that's all she's begging you for. So they all agreed that they'll help her. And as they're in the police precinct, you hear another officer call and go, hey, anyone want to take this Canadian call? And the one guy's like, well, they lose a moose. And he's like, oh, apparently a kid jumped the border or something. He's like, I'll take it. And he walks out and you're kind of like, okay, what's happening with Canada? And this is where a dual storyline kind of starts up. So so the cop eventually looks at her and goes, so you're telling me you're not going to accept that child into your home? And she's like, yeah, that's what I'm fucking telling you. I'm not accepting that child. And he goes, okay, I have some of my own help. And he opens the door and a woman's standing there. And he's like, last chance. And she's like, that's not my kid. He's like, great, take her away. Code 12.
No. First, you're missing something. So first, they leave this first. Like, she leaves with the kid. And then she's talking to the pastor dude again. And she tells the pastor dude, like, all right, what the fuck do we need to do? What do we need to do? What do I need to do? Because obviously, like, this shit it's not fixing itself. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So then he makes up this plan where what they're going to do is they're going to run a story in the paper. They're going to she's going to go to the precinct again and she's going to talk to a bunch of the reporters that are there after they've ran the story in the paper, and then he's going to have her on his radio show. So they do that. They run the story like, this is not my fucking kid. The LAPD is not doing anything to find him. Da, 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 da. She goes to the precinct and she stops on the steps and she talks to all the reporters and they record her and they get pictures of her and everything walking in, and all the cops see her like talking to them.
And that
she
one
goes
cop
in,
goes to the call box and calls it in.
yeah, he calls it in.
Steps.
Maybe they were filing some type of, she was somewhere like the courthouse or something. I can't remember exactly where she was.
She
She wasn't going up to
the cop station because she was just talking to the press. Saying,
well, then why would he call it in?
He had a phone.
But then why would he have to call?
I don't know. Maybe just to like make
somehow.
It
I can't remember exactly the chain of events, but somehow she winds up back at her house with the kid, and they send a police car down to pick her and the kid up. And they come into the precinct, and the guy's like, "Hey, there's this lady in the corner." He's like, "I watched the kid." Takes her in there, and it's basically like, "All right, you're not gonna stop, are you?" And she's like,
Nope.
"No." And that's when he's like, "All right, okay." And he calls
What's
a
the phone?
lady in with like two big dudes, and they grab her, and he's like, "All right, you're obviously fucking crazy, and
Yep.
you are not able to take care of your own child. So we are going to take care of your child because you can't, and
Yep.
you are going to take a little drive."
Yep.
And they gather her up, stick her in a car,
Shove her off.
drive her off to
The
the nut house.
fucking psych ward in the 1920s. Oh my god. What a fucking nightmare. And they show her, so then it jumps back. So she's now at the psych ward.
It
And I
jumps to
was
the
1930s psych ward, Jesus Christ. And then we jump to that detective that was like, yeah, I'm going to take that Canadian case. Cool. And he's driving down a road and he sees a man
he's out in the middle of nowhere.
oh yeah,
It's total
dusty
flat
nowhere.
nothingness.
And he's like, I'm looking for the Northcott Ranch. A man is on the side of the road, broken down. He's like, need help? And the man's like, no problem. And immediately I was like, that's a child rapist. Like, immediately. He's the creepiest fucking
I knew
character.
something was wrong with him.
Oh, yeah. Immediately, you're like, man, he killed everybody. Just everybody in the whole city. He did that crime. Creepy dude.
It's like Hills Have Eyes or Texas Chainsaw. Like, immediately. Yeah.
Immediately, you're like, nah, there's nothing right about that man. The cop's like, okay, well, I need the Northcott Ranch. And you could tell he's a little shifty about it, but he gives him directions. And then he's like, is anything wrong? He's like, oh, no. Just, I'm just with children's services or something like that. And
the guy reaches into the trunk or the bed of his truck, and he looks like he's going to be reaching for his shotgun that's in the bed. But then at the last minute, he changes his mind. At first, I was like, oh shit, it's starting early. But then he changes his mind, and he's just like, oh yeah.
So he pulls up to this old ranch, and it is run down as fuck. Like, it just looks abandoned, and it has an old poop thing. Like, and he's like, hello, nobody's answering. He opens the door to the old poop thing. He doesn't really see anything. He then sees a kid walk in.
It's a small barn.
Yeah, and he sees the kid walk in, and he's like, hey, and the kid like runs inside, and he goes and he just like kicks the door in.
He breaks the door down. Yeah. He's like he's like either open it or stand back. He just
I'm kicking it in. So he kicks it in. He's walking the house. He sees a picture of who else? Creepy fucker on the side of the road. And you're like, oh, fucking Northcott. It was you. I knew it. And then a kid jumps out of the closet on him, and he's like, what the fuck? I will beat the shit out of you. Stop moving. And so he arrests the kid. And then next thing you know, you see, like, he arrests the kid. He drives away with the kid. And then you see the Northcott guy at a train station. He's like, I need a train to Canada. And I'm like, oh, why are you running, Northcott? Where are you going, bud? And then I was like, $15 for a train ticket, you lucky fucker.
Back then that was a lot.
I know, but
a lot.
So
like, I'm watching Marvelous Miss Maisel, and she paid like $1.50 for a really old. I just started watching it, but she paid like $1.50 for like a really old, like one of a kind record, and they were excited to get that price for it. So yeah, $15.
Oh,
back then. Jesus.
Yeah. So
he had it though.
He did. Oh, he was going to get to Canada, damn it. So he was. I'm watching Good Omens right now. It's pretty funny. Anyways, so then we're back with her in the mental institution, and they're hosing her down, doing cavity searches. You're just like, oh my god! And she's getting tossed in with this one lady who's like, "This is my room," so screaming at her all night. And then she gets woken up, and she's like, breakfast down the hall, and she's like, I need to talk to someone in charge. And she's like, breakfast down the hall, bitch. Doctor will come to you. And I'm like, so she goes to breakfast, not really talking, and a girl sees her, and she's like, you better eat or they're gonna think you're crazy. And starts kind of talking to her, giving her tips and stuff. And she's like,
don't smile too much, but smile just enough.
Like, you're crazy. Smile not enough, you're fucking depressed.
Don't act.
Yeah, she's like,
don't ask to go home. Don't do
Yeah.
any of that. You just gotta like ride
Yeah.
the
So she's
line.
throwing this all out and she's like, what the fuck do you know? She's like, what do I know? I know that you're here on a code 12, just like me. I'm a pros. Or
And
she's
just
like,
like her,
like her.
and just like her, and
Yeah,
her.
she's like her who was getting beat by her husband when she tried to call on him. He tossed her in here. Or like her over there, who did something else with the cops. She's like me. I was a prostitute being beat.
Oh yeah.
She's
Yep.
like I tried to turn him
Was
in,
getting
turned out
beat
he was
up.
a cop. So
Yep.
now I'm here. She's like, you either start acting right and you can leave, or you don't act right and you end up like a vegetable. And she pointed at that old lady getting wheeled around, and I was like, get the needle to the brainy. So then she's just kind of like, oh fuck. So then then we get back, so it jumps back to the kid in the police station, and the kid that was taken from the ranch, and another kid is like tapping this ruler on his leg, and he's having flashbacks of like blood all over and axe and stuff, and he's like, stop doing that. And then he's like, I gotta talk to the cop who brought me here. And then one guy's like, sit down, you're going back to Canada, stop trying to make excuses. He's like, I gotta talk to that fucking cop. So that cop comes back, and the kid's like, look, man, I don't want to go to hell for killing kids. He made me do it. He's my cousin.
Yeah, and the cop's like, hold the
And
fuck
the cop's
on.
like, seriously, you're going back to Canada. It's not that bad. And he's like, I'm not lying. And he's like, okay, start from the beginning. And he tells him that he came down from Canada to help at the ranch. Northcott started doing terrible things to him and was forcing him to help him take boys. They would drive around to different towns, never hit the same town twice or neighborhoods twice. And they'd tell the boys that their parents were looking for them. The boys would see him in the car. And so they'd trust the situation. They'd get in, and then he'd throw them in that rundown little barn. And he's like, sometimes he only had one and would kill them immediately. Sometimes he'd have 4 or 5, and just he'd make me help at the end and stuff like that. And this guy just like, holy shit. So he's like, okay, you're saying, look at these pictures. Who do you recognize any of the boys? And he picks out like 13 fucking boys, because he's like, it could have been like 20. I lost count. And who's in that photo pile? Oh, fucking Walter Collins. And this guy's immediately like, you sure about this one? You positive about that? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm super positive. And he's like, so he calls the captain. He's like, Captain, I got this story. We got to investigate. He's saying the kid was there. And he's like, he's a liar. Send him to Canada. He's like, but I have to investigate a murder. He's like, you don't got to do shit. You don't got to do shit. You get your ass back to this precinct. You don't do shit. And the guy's like, I don't like this, but he doesn't. He goes back to the precinct. And then.
Well, no, he doesn't go back to the precinct yet. He goes back to. He hangs around the precinct that they're at, up near Northcott.
Oh, is that where he's at? I just saw precinct, and I assumed they were all at the same precinct.
No, they were at 2 different ones, because he was like calling him on the phone, and like the way that it works later, they're definitely at 2 different precincts. So okay. Yeah, I think he's at whatever's the closest.
So then they jump back to the mom. She's still in the mental institute, and it's time to take your meds. And she's like, I'm not taking meds. I'm not taking meds.
What are they? Yeah.
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 So it ends up in a kind of a fight moment, because they're trying to. She runs into the doctor, and she's like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I don't take meds.
No, first. So he sees her first. Yeah, he sees her first, and he talks to her.
There we go. Yeah.
First.
Okay. I had skipped that. Okay, so no, after the train station, then she goes and we have the scene of her meeting her doctor, and the doctor is like,
right.
Do you know why you're here? And she's like, oh yeah, I was very. She's trying to play it like I'm cool now, guys. You can send me home. And she was like, oh, I understand why they brought me here. It was no problem at all. I'm not scared. They had to. They were restricting me. I totally understand. And he's like, And
and he asks her how she's finding the accommodations, and she says something like, it's okay. Like, and he's like, and he's like, what? No, most people have like problems when they first get here. And she's like, well, I mean, it wasn't the best, but I get why you're doing it. Like, it makes logical sense. It doesn't to anyone, but she's like trying to play it off, and he's just like, and then he starts writing on his little note, I almost got fucking triggered. I hate it
Yes.
when
And
you're
he was
talking
trying. You know he was
to like
trying
a
to set her
mental
off.
health person and then
Yeah.
they start writing in their fucking notebook. What the fuck are you writing?
He's
I
just
hate
humming.
that.
He's just like,
Humming, yeah.
He's like, oh, we checked you for syphilis. And she's like, yes. Yep. And he's like, does that insult you? And she's like, oh, nope. Totally understand why you need to do that. It's for everyone's safety. And he's like, And then he's like, so you don't think your child is real? And she's like, I didn't say that. He's a real child. He's just not my child. And he's like, but yet you took a picture with this child and said he was. So do people change for you a lot? She's like, no, people don't change. It's just not my child. And then he's like,
And he's like, oh, people never change. And she goes, I didn't fucking say that. Like
yeah. She's
every
just
single
like,
thing that she says, he twists it around
oh
to
yeah,
make her sound like a lunatic.
yeah. So then you're just like, oh, fucking doctor. He's on the payroll. He's on the payroll. He's
Yeah.
not gonna keep her. Yeah.
Yep.
So then it cuts
And then
to the kid's confession. And then it's now we're back at the hospital. She has to take her meds. She runs over to the doctor and she's like, I'm not crazy and I'm not going to take meds that I don't know what they are. And you're not telling me. He goes, no, you're not crazy. She goes, yeah, I'm not crazy. He goes, great. So you'll sign this paper saying that you were wrong, the cops were right, and you don't mind this happening to you. And you'll go home and be quiet with that child. And she's like, well, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And he was like, great, take your pills then and get comfy because you're not going to fucking leave here until you sign this piece of paper, which causes her to start getting irate and screaming.
violent,
And
yeah.
so then they're trying to stuff a pill down her throat to get her to calm down, and all the girls start attacking, and the one who's giving her tips gets dragged off and electroshocked for a bit. And that
Because she slaps the doctor.
yeah,
She
so he
slaps the
calls her a
shit
whore.
out of the doctor. Yeah, he calls
Yeah.
her a whore. She slaps the shit out of him, and he sends
Yeah,
her to
he's like,
room
you know how things
18.
work, you whore. And she just slaps shit out. And he's like, have fun over there. And they electroshock the fuck out of her. And
Right.
then she comes into the room and she's like, I'm really sorry. You didn't have to stand up for me and stuff. And she's like, I got
Yeah, and the
nothing.
lady's like totally catatonic on the bed.
Oh
She's
yeah,
just
she
like
can't fucking
fully
move
stuck still.
because
She
they
can't do shit.
yeah,
Yeah,
shocked her
and
so
she's
bad.
like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, you know what? I don't have anything to lose here. I don't
Yeah.
really give a
She's
shit.
like,
And she's
fuck
like,
them,
fuck them
fight for your
and the
son.
horse they rode
Oh
in
yeah.
on. And
And then she talks
and
about
Kath,
she had lost, well, didn't leave. She had 2 abortions. She says she lost her 2 babies to a back alley doctor that she didn't have any choice in, and she wishes she could have children to fight for, and that you should never stop fighting. Fight for your child. And I was like,
right.
and she was like, so fuck them. And the horse they rode in. She's like, that's not very ladylike talk. And she's like, sometimes when you got nothing left, that's exactly the language you need to use. And she smiles and a nurse comes and she's like, you're not supposed to be in here. And she kind of just like runs away. And so then the one, it jumps back to the detective and he's sitting there and he's kind of twiddling his thumbs and he gets to the point where he's like, I can't sit on this. I can't sit on this. He's like, you come with me. Let's go. And he grabs
Yeah,
the kid.
get the boy in the car.
The kid was about to be deported. And he was sitting there and he was like, oh. And then he goes, no, just give me the kid. Give me the kid. And the guy's like, but he's about to. He's like, don't worry about it. I got it. And he gets, I'm going to call him Chuck and Larry. I don't know their fucking names. He's like, Chuck, Larry.
They weren't named.
Yeah. We got,
I don't think he said their names, no.
Yeah. So then he takes the kid back out to the farm and they check it. It's empty because, of course, he's already went off to Canada. And he gets the boy out of the car. He's like, okay, show me. And the boy walks over to this pit and he's like,
they hand him a shovel.
yeah.
And they're like,
the
all
boy
right,
was looking
you're
at
saying...
them and then he goes, you put him there, you bring him back out. And I was like, dark, dude, dark. But kind of just, I mean, you were being tortured and forced, but you did put him there. So the boy starts digging and he did not have to go far before he finds a foot inside of a shoe and some ribs.
Rib bones. Yeah.
And then he pulled out and I was like, oh, it's a tiny pelvis. Like, and then a part of me was like, did they make it tiny to symbolize a tiny child was involved? Or was it just kind of like, we only got this size of this phone, and he's like, oh, whatever, chuck it in, like.
Nah, if they would have put like a full grown pelvis in there, you would have been able to be like, that's
it's too big.
Ezekiel and full grown men. Like,
Yeah.
it was a tiny little pelvis.
Yeah.
And then the boy starts like furiously digging, and he sends like,
he's like,
he
you're
tells
done.
the other two cops, all right, get back to the precinct, get on the horn. I need everybody out here. Tell them I was right. Go take the car. They get in the car, and then he's like, all right, okay.
Yeah,
You
and the
can
boy's
stop
sobbing.
now. You can stop
And,
now.
yeah, I was like,
Takes the shovel from him and is like, gets down next to him and is like rubbing his back, and he's like, okay, you did the right thing now. Like, you proved it. You did everything you could.
You got them out. You got them out.
Right.
Let's go. And so it's 6 days later now. So now this investigation is, of course, full blown, and you're back at the captain's office, and I keep wanting to call him fucking general. The chief calls him, yes, and is like, hey bud, you fucked up. So fucking fix it now. And
make it go away is what he says. It
you
needs
make this
to
shit
go away.
Yeah.
Whatever you need to do to fix it, to make it go away, make it go away.
And he's pretty much saying,
like, it's fine.
You fall on your fucking sword, dude. Fall on it. Because this is all gonna fall on your head now. All this shit show, all these protesters out here, you're gonna hit that. So go on. And I'm like, yeah, eat shit, you fucking captain. And then they show the one guy interviewing the kid, her kid.
Yeah.
Fake Walter. And they're like, so who are you? Who are you really? And he's like, I ain't Walter. And he's like, no, seriously, you have last chance and you're going to jail. Because this is now a murder investigation. And he's like, okay. Name's Arthur. I just want
at first he's like, you can't send me to jail. I'm a kid. Yeah. And he's like, we got another kid only a few years older than you who's going to jail for this fucking murder.
Yeah.
So, like, jail or a foster home?
Which one is it then?
Which one you want to choose? And finally the kid breaks and is like,
yeah,
I just saw LA on TV. I wanted
to meet this Western guy. LA
and his horse.
Western guy. I thought he might let me ride his horse. And I was like, fucking A, kid. Awful horse. You traumatized this woman this way for a fucking horse. Get wrecked.
And what did you think? You thought, I know kids are stupid and I know they're selfish little assholes, but still, you thought you would just show up in LA, pretend to be this random lady's son, and then what? You would somehow meet this Western star and he'd be like, sure, bud, let me get you up on my horse.
Like, you think LA's a small town, bro? You think she knows
like,
who the fuck
what
this
the
guy
fuck?
is? Like, get serious. So then we jump back to Canada. It's still 1928, and he goes to his sister's house. And he's like, can I come in? Can I take a shower? And
Northcott
she's like,
dude goes.
Yeah, I can't wait I'm so glad you're here. Great. And then she's immediately like, call the cops.
Yeah, he asked to use the bathroom. He asked to go shower. He looks gross. He looks disgusting. He definitely looks like he hasn't showered in a week. And when he goes up to the shower, her husband comes in and is like, is that your fucking brother? And she's like, call the police, please. So he kicks her out, tells her to go to the neighbor's house and calls the police, and they like immediately storm in. Okay, so you've had this whole criminal mastermind organization killing these boys for who knows what reason, because why? It's never explained the thought process of like, why were you actually doing this? Like, it wasn't any kind of sexual deviance. It was just, it's never explained. So you're doing all of this, you run away to Canada, and you go to your sibling's house?
Right? You go to your sister? It's not a good move.
Think that they've caught up to you? You think you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
And you go to your sibling's house. Like, you were the dumbest fucking criminal.
Ever. So he gets caught, he gets brought home, and then it jumps to the scene where the pastor storms into the mental asylum. He's like, get her the fuck out. But she's already been let out. Because as soon as
so he walks in with like this group.
Yeah.
He walks in with like this group of people.
But she's already being put out the back because they were like, fuck.
And he's got, but not only that, he's got legal documentation. Like, you have to tell me basically where she's at. And they're like, she's gone.
Yeah.
Sorry. And she's just like walking down the street. She looks awful. She looks so bad and so small, like the way she's curling in on herself. And like,
Yeah.
she doesn't know what's happening. They let her go. He like the doctor was literally like tried one more time and he was like, "Are you going to sign this paper?" And she was like, first he went to the doctor was going to put her in the electroshock therapy for something that she said or did. I can't remember. He's going to put her in electroshock, sends her to room 18. At the end, right before they're about to crank it up, the nurse runs in and is like, yeah,
Yeah.
have you seen the paper? We can't do this. Doctor brings her into his office and he's like, you going to sign the paper? And she's like, no. And he's like, all right, bye then. And she
Yeah.
leaves and
And
like
then,
all dejected.
unfortunately, and as she's walking out, Pastor runs in, and her first stop is at the newsstand where one of the newsboys is screaming, Walter Collins dead, murderer found, and to which point she collapses. But miraculously, the pastor is outside and catches her.
He caught up to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it goes to her house where the pastor's with another man, and he's like, we could take them to court. We can fight for this, and we could get the best lawyer, but we can't afford him. And she was like, well, shit. And then that's when the other man's like, that's why I'm doing it pro bono, because this is fucked up. This is some of the most fucked up shit I've ever heard in my life. And she smiled. Yeah. He's like, great. I always told Walter, you don't start a fight, but we're going to finish it. And I was like, go fucking get him. So then it's court time. So at the same time, Northcott is being brought in by the train, and the people are trying to interview him, and he's like, I didn't know people were looking at me. I was just visiting family. I don't know what's happening. And he's still fucking creepy. I think he even got creepier. Like the way he smiles, he's icky. And then it shows her showing up at the courtroom, and like they're having to blow out the speakers because there's so many protesters.
So first what happens is they show back up at the asylum. They show back up at the asylum with more documentation. It's the lawyer is showing up, and he drops down the thing and is like, this is an immediate release of everyone in this facility that has been brought here under like a, what do they call it, number 12 or whatever. Code 12. Every one of them. Gather them all up. Yeah, gather them all up.
At first the nurse is like, you can't do this. And he's like, madam,
you can't come here.
Yes, I can. Get me those women.
Like, I will physically remove you if you don't get the fuck out of my way. So she releases all of them.
Yeah. And I was like, fucking right. And so then they show up at the courthouse, and it's like a fucking zoo. Moving you over here real quick. And like they're putting on big speakers to so everyone outside.
On the outside.
Yeah. And then you know,
so they go into one of the big
like
they go into one of the big things. They go into like one of the big areas, and it's totally packed full.
But they're like, the cops aren't here yet. Like the chief of police isn't here, and the judge is like, well, shit, I guess we're gonna have to call recess or whatever. And then the guy's like, come across the hall real quick.
The lawyer. Yeah, the lawyer's like, you gotta come with me.
Yeah. And he's like, they decided not to make a big fuss, so it wasn't a circus like it is across the hall. And this is Northcott's trial. And so she sits down next to another mother, and the other mother is like, I'm really sorry. My condolences. You know, he got my boy too. But what they did to you was fucking awful. And so Northcott comes in, and he's like, oh, it's you. Oh fuck, what did he say to her?
I seen you in the papers.
Yeah, he's like,
I seen you in the papers.
He's like, you're just like me, pretty much. Like, you're being persecuted, and so am I. And she's just like, gross.
Yeah, the fuck. Yeah. And he says something about Walter. He says like, I've never seen Walter, or something like that. He says something to her and tells her.
Yeah.
Saying to her like, Walter wasn't one of the one. I don't know who Walter is. And so she's like, shit. Like, what the fuck? But she sits through the whole trial with him.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine, like, going into that situation and then thinking my son is dead and then having the serial killer look at me and be like, "Oh, that wasn't one of mine."
Yeah.
What
Um,
what the fuck?
oh my God. So then it jumps to, I think just back to the other
Yeah, it's
place
back to
where
the
the
other one
chief is
and
now being interrogated, being like, why would you react to it? He got his ass chewed out. That lawyer was worth it because he made him look like a fucking asshole, as he should have.
the whole
A
gallery
fucking
is
asshole.
laughing.
Yeah.
The whole
Yeah.
gallery is laughing at this dumbass
Yeah.
whatever
Oh yeah.
cop trying to spin he's trying to spin the story of like, well, we wouldn't have known. She
Yeah.
was
How could
hysterical.
we're not responsible for this? If she would have just listened to us, if she would have just trusted us, like sit here,
Right.
so what? So, like, you guys didn't
This
do
never
anything.
would have been found out. You
Yeah.
never would have found any of this out.
The guy across the hall would still be fucking murdering kids. Good job. Good job.
Right.
So, but he gets his ass chewed out. Then it jumps back over to Northcott, and it's time for him to get his sentencing. He's found guilty, and they sentence him to 2 years in solitary confinement, which I was like, holy shit. And then they will go to death. And he was like, do you have any last words? And he's like, he turns around to her and he's like, I didn't hurt your little I would never hurt Walter. He's an angel. I'm being persecuted. You're all, I'm an innocent man. And she just like fucking shocked and ugh, he's gross. And then it jumps back over to that trial to where it's not really a trial. They have more of a committee thing happening, and they're like, we suggest that the chief and the captain are fired, that we look at laws that you can't just toss people into a fucking psych ward whenever you want, and that she got to pay out. And then it jumps up to,
So she's back at work, right?
yeah, it goes up to 1935.
Yeah, it's been 5 years. She's back at work.
Yeah, no, because first she's supposed to get a telegram. So I think it's only been like a year or so, year and a half. She gets the telegram from Northcott saying, I'm gonna die. Because Northcott
Oh,
goes,
yeah.
So
Yeah, but she is back at work when she gets the telegram, and the cops come in like, we got to, or the lawyer, it's the lawyer that comes in and is like, we got a weird ass fucking telegram from this guy.
And he's like, hey, he's saying he will admit to it to you if you go visit him, and you'd be the first woman to get to see a prisoner in like 30 fucking years.
And you got to go right now because
he's gonna go.
Death date is tomorrow.
Yeah, if you want to go. So she does go, and of course this fucking piece of shit just goes, I know I said I would, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't know your son. I can't tell you anything, and I don't want you here. And of course she gets angry.
Well, he goes off about finding God, and he's been forgiven for all of his sins, and if he lies now, then that he doesn't have enough time to ask for forgiveness again, so he just can't tell her a lie to her face because then he's going to be doomed to hell, and she freaks the fuck out. He's chained by his wrists, but he's not like chained to a table, and they're in the room like locked in by themselves. And he like gets up, and she gets up behind him. She starts screaming at him. She literally like grabs him. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Like, this seems wild to me now. Yeah, and she's like, "You're going to hell. You were going to hell. I hope you go to hell. I hope you go to hell." And he starts freaking out. And then he starts freaking out and runs out like a little bitch and hides behind the guards.
He calls the guards. He's like, guards. And as she's screaming at him, I hope you go to hell. You're going to go to hell. You deserve to go to hell. He's just smirking. He's just a fucking psychopath who likes to hurt people. And he got to see hurt on a person one more time before he died. And that was his own fucking goal, because he's a piece of shit. And so then it jumps up to 1935. Oh yeah, and we watch him hang, and he's crying like a little bitch when he's getting hung.
It's so okay, but when
I'm like,
obviously I don't agree with the death penalty, but like when he's walking up the steps is so fucking funny because the cops are trying to get him up there, and he's taking his sweet ass time, and he starts yelling, "Let me walk slow, don't be pushing me," and I'm like, bro.
Oh yeah, And he's
Bro.
sobbing. He's like, somebody pray
Yeah.
for me. I'm like, nobody's gonna pray for you. What? You killed children, and then you keep fucking with the mothers because you think it's funny. Like, so he gets put to death. He gets hung, and now it's 1935, and she is looking good, looking happier. She clearly finally got the promotion because she has her own office, and the girls are trying to ask her to go out, and she's like, "Oh, I can't go out, but thanks." And then her boss asks her out, and she's like, "Oh, I can't." But then she does kind of come out the door, and she's like, maybe celebrate my movie winning the awards tomorrow." And you're kind of like, okay, she's moving on. She's finding happiness. And then she gets a call from the other mother, and the other mother's like, I had to tell you first, they found him. So they found the other mother's son, and they're interviewing him. And he's telling a story of he was kidnapped and thrown into the shed with 5 other boys. And they found a loose spot, so they all ran out. But then he got stuck.
I think it was 3 of them. I think it was
Yeah, well,
3
he
of them
says
total.
2 brothers. It was 2 brothers. It was Walter, and he was the 5th kid there. So 2 brothers, Walter, and another kid. And they all found a loose spot, and they were running. He got stuck, and Walter came back to loosen him up, and they got away. But by then, the bad guy was out of the house.
Northcutt.
Yeah, Northcutt was out screaming and shooting at them, and
they all scattered.
All ran. Yeah, he's like, we all scattered, and I never saw anyone again. And they're like, why didn't you come home? And he was like, he told us that we were all that we would go down too, and I didn't want to get in trouble. And then once we saw he got convicted of murder, I didn't want to get convicted of murder, so I stayed away. And then it made me cry when he was like, well, then why would you come back now? And he's like, I missed my mom. And I was like, right. Like, so then when the mom heard that, because the cops weren't letting her see him, they wanted to interview him first. When she heard that, she was in that room, and I was like, me too, mama, me too. Like, so then, she's crying, and they're all leaving the building, and the cop looks at her, and he's like, Walter saved that kid's life. You must be really proud of him. And she's like, I am proud of him. And now I have hope. He could be out there too. He could be scared. He could be waiting to see me, and I'll be here waiting for him. And then it's kind of credits roll. You see that the cops all got their jobs back by like 33, something like that. I'm like, so nothing happened to them. They also never fucking paid her. And they never officially know what happened to Walter. So, according to this movie. So that's the movie. And then you see that it was directed by Clint Eastwood. And I was like, Clint Eastwood, great movie. 10 out of 10. I think I will say I haven't seen this movie before. When in like 2008 when it first came out, because I'm a huge Angilina fan. I was like, oh fuck yeah. It didn't get me back then like it got me now. And I think that is because I'm a mom. And I was just like, if this was happening to me, like, oh.
I would go fucking nuts.
Yeah.
I would go fucking rabid.
Yeah,
like, I don't even.
That is one thing I will say is I think at some point, once I realized I was being kind of threatened and like they're not going to help me, I don't think I would have been strong enough like her to be like, you're not going to budge me. I'm going to find my child. Like, I would be like that, but I would be like, fine, I'll sign the paper so I can get out of here. And then in my mind, I'm like, I'll find it my fucking self. I'm not even going to deal with y'all anymore. You know what I mean? Like, but fucking kudos to her for she just did not back down. And I was like, but what a fucking nightmare. Just a fucking
total fucking nightmare.
Like, Jesus. So now we get to find out the truth. So in the movie, it shows that she had to work, but that's not really what happened. And she also wasn't a single mother. She was a single mom, but the dad wasn't dead. He was in jail. And then I found 2 different reasons. One reason was that he was a speakeasy owner, and the other reason was that he was in for robbery. And I think robbery is probably closer to where it actually happened. So he had actually asked to go to the movies that night, and so she let him go to the movies, and he never came home from the movies. He was last seen standing on the street downtown by a couple, and then he was gone. She did work for a telephone company. People described her as being very serious and non-emotional, especially when talking to men. and especially men in authority. I couldn't find any article actually stating like how fast the LAPD jumped into this, other than after a couple. Well, I found one. It was BuzzFeed did an episode on this, so I was watching. Their episode said it took her 5 days to call the cops. All the articles I found from like actual sites I would kind of trust more, nobody ever really put in like a she called that very night, she called a week later. Like I never saw a number, so I'm not sure where they got that number from. But if it really took her 5 days, what the fuck would it take you 5 days for it? But either way, by a couple days, newspapers had picked it up, and LAPD was like really into it. They were draining rivers, they were searching they had dogs out, they were searching up and down for this boy. And tons of calls were coming in all the way from San Diego. He was said to be seen at a Glendale gas station, covered in newspaper. People were claiming to just see him every fucking where. And then his father believed that former why do I feel like I'm saying that? Yeah, cellmates of his were looking for revenge because he was a jailhouse rat. And so now it's August, and a boy from Illinois is claiming to be Walter, and he's found in a cafe. So, but fucking get this. Okay, so that whole 50-man hit squad was real. The movie got that absolutely right. So they were against this PlayStation for that very reason. But when they called to be like, hey, we think we found your kid, they made her pay for his trip. $70 to get this kid home. Yeah. And so remember that we said $15 was a lot of money in 1920. $70 for the single mother to get this child home that is supposedly hers. And I have found pictures, and they don't look anything alike. Because get this. So in the movie, they said he was 3 inches shorter. He was actually only an inch shorter than him, but her son was 9. This boy was 12. And they're, at least, I mean, maybe he hadn't hit puberty, but the pictures, you see a huge difference in the pictures of these kids. I'm like, come on, man. That's not close. And this kid is clearly hitting puberty. Like, he's clearly older. Walter has a little baby face, little round cheeks, and this kid is more chiseled, like no baby fat at all. And they're just like, hey, 5 months will do that to you. So anyways, and she immediately was like, no, that's not my kid. Now, some people said she didn't say that she just kind of took the kid and accepted, like, okay, maybe this is a trauma thing and I'm not recognizing him, and didn't really say anything until 3 weeks later. Or in some articles, it was like she was to me like, no, that's not my kid, like in the movie. And the cop is like, nah, give it a try out. And she was like, okay. But all in all, 3 weeks later, she ends up back at the police station, and she's like, here's all the proof with the dentals, with the neighbors. It doesn't look like a doctor ever actually came to her house. It looks like that was kind of made up. But she did go to them. And then that whole speech he said to her when he was like just eating into her, that was from transcripts from the court case. He said that shit like to her and then chucked her off to the mental institution. Like, yeah. So, but, and in that, when she had went to the police station and was like, this is not my kid, here's all this proof from doctors and neighbors saying he's not my kid. I guess there was a dog involved somewhere, a friend's dog, something like that. And one article said that the cops were like, look, the dog reacts to him perfectly. So you're crazy. Medical record, his teacher doesn't recognize him. Fluffy does. So that's all I'm saying. Like, did not make fucking sense at all. Seriously. So he ate into her. He really did that. That was from the transcripts. Threw her in the code 12. Kept that real. She was thrown in for code 12. But while she was in there, so in the movie, they make it seem like a lot of this stuff was really overlapping, and and that while she's in the psych ward, somewhere fake kid is just off living his best life. They don't really say what he's doing. We were just assuming maybe foster care, but in reality, she gets shipped off for a week. While she's in the psych ward, he admits that he's not. He admits he's Arthur. He's like, yeah, I wanted to meet a cowboy and ride a fucking horse, and I've been a runaway for a while. Apparently, his mom died. He didn't like his stepmom, so he ran away. He had a couple different aliases, and just this because he wanted to. And he called it. He was like, she knew I wasn't him. I knew I wasn't him. It was a fun game we played. I was like, I don't know, man, Arthur. I think you've been through some shit, and you sound a little psychotic. Like that, you have no. I feel like for a 12-year-old, you should have empathy at this point. It's crazy to think at 12 you would be acting like a fucking 5-year-old. So
I can see a 12-year-old twisting that to make it sound. I can see a 12-year-old, especially a 12-year-old boy, being like, "Oh, we were just, just having fun."
I'm very much a 12-year-old. They know. Unless you're telling me he's a fucking sociopath, a 12-year-old does know. He knew he was hurting her. He just didn't care.
Yeah, it's like, 12-year-olds at that point, they don't. Middle school kids, they don't have a lot of empathy. They don't have a lot of empathy. So yeah, twisting it is the wrong phrase. Maybe not twisting it, but making it just like, I got a bed to sleep in, and I got so like.
Well, I could definitely see it. I think at that age, you definitely justified. Like,
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Is justifying it.
Very easily justify shit within yourself.
That's the word. Yeah.
To be impulsive. I mean, of course, you're a child. So, yes, I could definitely see a kid impulsively being like, oh, yeah, that's my ticket to LA. Get in there. And then just being like, everything's cool still because this is why I have to do this. Like, they're just really good at justifying why shit needs to happen the way they just said it needed to happen,
Yeah. Without the understanding
of the
larger world.
Yeah, I am like, yes, 12 is a child. I'm not saying he should be like convicted of murder or something, but I am kind of like, but you were fucking little shit for that shit. You were a shit, especially if she was crying in the house, which I'm sure she was. Like, you're a piece of shit. At least on the fast track to it. You might have time to turn away, but I don't think that happens. Right. So, and then Arthur went to meet. He wanted to meet a cowboy. Okay. So then it kind of all fumbles out of then, like, around that time, they also found mass murderer guy, Northcott. It wasn't his cousin, it was his nephew that he kidnapped from Canada. That all comes out, and they have all the trials like they did in the movie with the speakers outside with people protesting. Northcott did get the 2 years and then put to death. And pretty much as the movie said, they were suggested to be fired, but then they pretty much got their jobs right back. She never saw any money, and she never saw Walter again. So here's where then I made it a separate thing for Northcott because he's his own kind of separate case. So he would end up going up to Canada and ask his sister for his nephew to come work on his farm. And pretty soon, as soon as the nephew got there, he was subjected to horrible sexual abuse and torture. And he was then put into hunting children for him. And he was forced to kill some of the kids with Northcott.
Okay, so the real story is it was sexual in nature.
It was. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because in the movie they just gloss over that completely. It's like, oh, he's stealing kids and killing them.
Yeah.
Like.
So what's worse about Northcott's story is that he wasn't there by himself. His mom and dad lived with him, and his mother was helping him. Yeah, she was.
So yeah, it was some real Hills Have Eyes shit.
Oh yeah,
some real fucking Texas Chainsaw.
And here's what makes it worse about the police. So at this time of saying like Walter's runaway or looking for Walter, at the very same time you had 2 brothers who were missing, but had written weird notes home. Like one was like, I'm in Mexico, and another one was like, I'm just not coming back. And so 2 other boys missing along with Walter. Another boy was found headless in a ditch. And then there was also a call for horrible abuse happening next door at a ranch that the cops ignored all of it, or at least at the very least did not connect any of this or didn't want to. Yeah. So the police would ignore all calls on this shit, and but he got lucky. So the kid, his sister was worried about him because she thought his notes that were coming were just off. So she goes down to visit, where she promptly gets raped and finds out about the boys. She runs off, right? And tries, and her brother even told her some of the bad things that was happening to him. She runs off to the cops. The cops are like, I don't fucking believe you. So she goes, cool. Yeah. She goes, cool. Do you know where an illegal is? And they were like, an illegal. And so that pretty much happened. I know where there's abuse. No, not interested. I know where there's illegal. Get me there now. So they show up because of the whole illegal thing. And on September 15th, he would be interviewed. The boy would be taken because he's an illegal. And then that's when he would tell of all the horrific things that were happening. And that after the boys were axed to death, Northcott would cover them in quicklime to dissolve all their bodies. And so the nephew did point out Walter in a picture thing, saying that he did help kill Walter and that Northcott had killed Walter. But when the cops were searching the farm, while they found a lot of stuff like Boy Scout badges, books that could connect other missing boys to the farm, they never found anything that could officially connect Walter. And Northcott himself would be real wishy-washy about Walter. He was kind of like, I did it, I didn't do it. And then his mother admitted to killing Walter, saying she was the one that did the killing blow, and she buried him out back. So she got life in prison for killing Walter. She was the only one officially convicted for killing Walter. Northcott would be convicted of killing 3 other boys, like in the movie. They couldn't prove the other ones. Oh yeah, him and his mom were on the run. They got caught in December in Canada. And that's when the mom would admit that she was actually the grandmother aunt of him, because it was actually her, not aunt, but it was her daughter's son. Northcott is her daughter's son from her father. So her husband raped his daughter, and that Northcott is their child. Yeah. And Northcott would also himself apparently be raped by his father and mother. Yeah. So
It's just a big bag of awful.
Oh yeah.
It's just a big,
real bad.
It's just a truckload of awful.
Yeah. And Northcott would say in trial, he would try to represent himself. His pictures look as fucking creepy as that actor. Like his real pictures, super fucking creepy. He has the craziest fucking smile. He would say that he couldn't have killed the boys because he loved them so much. And
they're called the Wineville Chicken Coop murders.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And they would they actually changed the name of the town after this whole thing, because it was they were like, we don't want this name anymore because it's associated with such a horrific murder. This was like one of the biggest murders that ever happened at this time. So they would all go down for it. But officially, they still consider Walter Collins unsolved because Northcott and his mom aren't considered trustworthy in any way, and they keep flip-flopping their stories. But yeah, that's my internet just like went goodbye. No.
Oh shit, it's off. Yeah,
That's all the truth. As for the kid that got away, I did find one on other article written by a college student about that kid, and it didn't say anything about Walter helping him get away. But other than that, I can't find any other article even mentioning him. So I'm not sure if that really happened or not. But either way, it doesn't look like it happened in a way that Walter was actually involved with in the whole giving her hope thing. Like at best, I think it was just some kids could have gotten away from him. But
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
like this guy, hold on. This guy, oh God.
right? Hey, I
No.
didn't know this was a thing. I wondered, can they see this in the recording?
You
And how'd
should
you
be able
change
to,
my
yeah.
screen?
Huh?
How'd you change my screen? This is great. Technology,
And
man.
I'm just sharing the screen.
But
Jesus
yeah, isn't
Christ.
he creepy as fuck,
And
man?
that's mom?
Yeah, that's mom.
That's gotta be mom.
Yeah,
Oh God. Oh
that indeed.
Jesus.
Mm-mm,
I killed
mm-mm.
Alvin on the ranch, February 2nd, 1928. No self-defense. Will plead guilty to the above charge. I will take Northcott into county. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that man is not, he's
Right?
not well.
No, that's not a trustworthy face if I've ever fucking seen one.
No, not at all. But it says, this article says that the um
Yeah,
the
that's
nephew,
you.
yeah, he went on to like, he was sentenced to 5 years at a state school. He was there for 23 months and he was deported. And he served in World War II, got married, worked for the Postal Service. They adopted and raised 2 kids.
Yeah. So it's not like he got his life together, which is
Yeah,
great. I'm glad something good came out of such a horrible situation, or that he didn't let it get him totally down. Um,
right.
but yeah,
Jesus
you
Christ.
should pull up the photos between Arthur and Walter,
Hold on. All right, let me.
and then be like, "Come on, they look. I mean, kind of similar in a way of like could be related, but not. Come on, it's not. I would be pissed.
What was the last name? Arthur what?
Oh God.
Or Walter, what was his last name
Well, his
again?
name's Walter Collins.
Walter Collins. And Arthur Hutchins.
Yeah.
The first search is, why did Arthur pretend to be Walter?
He wanted to write a
Oh, that farm looks totally
Oh, doesn't it look
like
decrepit?
dilapidated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally dilapidated.
Apparently, Clint Eastwood went and walked around it before making the movie. Um,
Here's the thing about Clint Eastwood. He makes good movies if he stops doing this whole like almost QAnon, like this propaganda thing that he likes to do of like the old man who used to be a detective or some kind, and he goes into this like
I do
area
feel
and
like,
he ends up having to fight for them and like all of that. If he
yeah,
stops doing that and if he just focuses on making a good movie, he can make good movies.
yeah.
But he just
I think he, when he's in the movie, that's very much his acting character. He's
yeah,
definitely
and I hate
typecast, and
it.
that's his typecast. But when he's just on the creative side, and like this one, he's just directing, he's not in the movie at all. I think he made a great movie. But I do say, after reading the actual history on it and stuff, I gotta say that he kind of, it seems like he took anything that could have been frowned upon in her life to make her the perfect victim. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm. Yeah,
if did
yeah,
she
he
really
did.
wait that long to call? Like, he took away any, or being like, oh, a man didn't abandon this poor woman. Like, she married a jackass and he went to prison. You know what I mean? Like, anything that could have made like, and those are things that would have humanized her, but instead we got like this perfect victim, and so it is a good
Yeah.
movie, but I feel like you didn't have to change her life so much. You could let her be a person, and it's okay that women
Yeah.
aren't perfect.
Yeah. All right. So this is Walter, right?
Yeah, Walter.
That's Walter.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
the
that's
other
Arthur?
one. Yeah, that's Arthur.
That's not the same child at all. The
No,
lips are totally different. The nose is totally different. This child looks like he might have had some fetal alcohol syndrome. Like the way his face is really kind of smushed in and the way his eyes.
oh yeah,
That's not Walter.
right. I'm like, you got
Yeah, no,
cherry
I would have
cheeks here. You
flipped
got way bigger.
his
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 ears stick out. Like Walter looks like a child. And not that he doesn't look like a
yeah.
child, but like it's very different. Like he doesn't have a baby face at all.
No, even his hairline, that I would have freaked the fuck out.
Yeah.
I would have
And
totally
like look
freaked the
at
fuck
her
out.
poor face. This is the train
Yeah,
station picture. Like
she's not.
that's not a mom
No,
who
she's
just
not
found her
happy at
son.
all.
Yeah. That
No,
is
and this
not
is the
what someone would
face.
do.
This is the
Yeah,
face of
that's
a
the
little
face of
asshole.
success.
Look at the little
Oh yeah.
smile.
Oh yeah. This
Face
oh
of
yeah.
an asshole.
He's so fucking proud of himself right now. Crazy.
Insane. I would lose my
Crazy.
shit.
Yeah. Yeah, we gotta screen share more often and get pictures involved.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, you have the ability to do it.
I'm
All
such a do
participants.
you know my Maxwell was up here earlier and he had full screen YouTube to watch a video and I could not get off full screen. He was like, do you need help, mom? I was like, damn it, Maxwell, yes. Help
You
mommy with
hit
her
escape.
computer machine. I hit escape and nothing was happening. And he
So
was like,
you
just do
hit
this,
like
mom.
F11. I think it's F11.
11, you're getting too fancy now. You're too fancy.
Yeah, I think it's one of these.
It's one of the.
I
I'm not
could
gonna
figure
be
it out.
pushing buttons willy nilly. I've seen things crash.
Oh, I don't. My computer is a machine, and I treat it like a machine. I can fix it, and I got people
I
that can
can't
fix
fix
it
it.
if I
If I
can't
fuck
fix
up,
it.
I have no
So
computer. So
no, I got people. I got people for that. They could walk me through it. I can figure it out.
yeah.
It's
But I think for this movie, I'll give the movie a strong 9 out of 10, and I think staying to the truth, and also 9 out of 10. I think you pretty much stayed to the truth, other than curving out her edges to make her this perfect Pollyanna victim. I mean, it's
yeah,
pretty what happened, the story of, you know, like how
yeah. I mean, yeah,
instead of letting your kid go to the movies all by himself, it was this poor mother had to work. She had to leave him by himself. Like that was you could
yeah,
have just showed him going to the movies. You didn't. It's 1920s. Of course, kids go to the movies by themselves. Kids play outside by themselves in the 1920s. They were fucking feral or around there. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Literally, get out
like
of my house.
yeah, you could have just showed it as the 1920s, but other than that, I'd say that's probably their worst case of like Hollywooding it up. Other than that, I'd say he found a heinous ass story and he did a good job. He definitely didn't propaganda this one, at least. The cops look like assholes. You hate them in this
No,
for sure.
which is so crazy to see in
Yeah,
a Clint Eastwood movie.
yeah.
It's like, what happened,
Oh
sir?
yeah, the cops, the doctors, pieces of
Yeah,
shit.
what?
He did not round their
Yeah,
edges in any way at all. So that's awesome. So this was good. I felt the feminine rage. I still do. And it really, how easy it was to throw a woman into a mental institution back then was
yeah. And it was
infuriating.
actually a little bit more difficult back then in like the 20s than it was
In
in
the
like the
50s.
1800s. Well, it
Oh,
was in the
1800s?
1800s, it was
Jesus.
so easy.
We were lucky if we
Like,
got
I feel
mental
like we
institution
talk.
in the 1800s and not fucking witch trial. Like, I don't,
No, well, like the late 1800s, like the
yeah.
1860s onwards. Yeah, it was really anybody, any man that had any relation to a woman at all could get her
Oh, yeah,
put
you could,
into a
she has
mental
hysteria.
institution.
Toss her in.
Yeah.
It was
She
actually
reads
super
too many
common.
novels.
Oh, yeah. It's even super
Yeah.
common up into the 50s of ooh, I want a divorce, but you can't really do that. So, oh, she's crazy. into the mental institution so he can go get himself a younger wife. Like that was happening off the charts. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really bad.
So
Like
bad.
we have never gotten mental health right in this country.
Now, I will
Ever.
say, so the guy who created the style that you usually see in a lot of like the classic creepy asylums, you see how they have like the main area, then like wings out, you know? He,
Mhm.
when he invented that, there was a time, it was a short time, I'll give you that, where because he was the big guy in that field, and he was like more sunlight for them, more walking, like, and all these things are great, especially for like the mentally disabled, which are the people who are supposed to be at asylums and stuff, like. And it was he wanted a like a pretty much just 2-to-1 nurse ratio, and so they could get more one-on-one time, bring in the crafts, like all the stuff you hear today of like he was putting that out there, and this was like early 1800s. And then very quickly here come governments and shit going, oh, here's somewhere we can just toss people, and also why
Well, yeah.
fund them? No funding. And then you end up with like 200 to a nurse, and
Yeah, well what they ended up doing was
and
yeah, what they ended up doing with like the sunlight and the walking the grounds and stuff is they turned it into a privilege
yeah,
instead of a part of the actual, so like you had to earn that right and then they could take that away from you.
yeah, because it
So
quickly
like
went from this is a home to help the disabled to this is also a place where I could just keep my criminally insane, where I could just throw any woman I don't want. And then you also just had doctors who didn't want to work there. So then you have understaffed, overworked, angry people taking their anger out on these poor people.
yeah, well, and the doctors at the time, especially in the 1800s, we did a whole episode on a woman who went into the asylum in the late 1800s due to her husband on chaotic nonsense. So like they would, the way that it worked back then is that the only governing body that they had was like a board of directors, like at a business. Like
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't like state governance. Like they got grants and they got money and stuff from the state, but as far as the governance, it wasn't that. And the so what would happen was you would have these doctors of psychiatry. There was no actual psychiatry at the time. There wasn't actual classes. There wasn't, it wasn't a what do they call it? Where you go in, like if you go to be a surgeon and then you become
Yeah.
a neurosurgeon, like, you know, where you take a really specific path. There wasn't any of that for psychiatry back then. Psychiatry was rather new science. So what would happen is these regular doctors would study on their own within their little group of other doctors that they knew, and they would share information that way, and then they would just kind of declare themselves a psychiatrist, and they would just say, oh, this is my specialty, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm going to open a mental ward, I'm going to rule the roost in my own little kingdom.
Yeah.
And then they had the board of directors, but then when the board of directors would only come a couple of times a year, and when they came they would clean up everything. And the way that he did lay that out originally with the hopes of it being, you know,
It was
somewhere nice where they could
one
come.
guy trying,
Yeah,
and then
so they would still do that, but they weren't
yeah,
doing it for that reason anymore. They were doing it for convenience, and it made it really easy to shuffle, especially women. They had different classes of women within the asylum. So like you had the married white women who were there because their husbands are putting them there and aren't really crazy, you know, they just have a little bit of hysteria, or they read too many books, or they're a little bit too sexual, or like not sexual enough, you know, whatever it is. And then you would have the next level of like, oh, these are white ladies that
yeah,
a little bit more crazy. And then you would have like, oh, here's the black ladies and here's the indigenous ladies, and like, so like it made it really easy for them to section them off of different wings. And then when the people would come in, they would clean it up and they would show them only the white married ladies wing. which are the most docile and the
Yeah.
most not crazy. So then the board of directors would be like, "Oh, this is going great.
Lovely.
Here's more money."
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Like the list of things, like this is literally the book, and it has a like a photocopy, couple of them, of the different things that you could put your wife, sister, mother, daughter into the insane asylum for, and it is absolutely out of this fucking world, all the different things that they were putting these women in. Hold on, let me find it, cuz like every time I read it I'm like, bro, I, I just like, are you absolutely out of your fucking mind? Like, it was literally like the most mundane.
Just
Like,
like
she
what
went
happened to
crazy while she was on her period.
yeah,
That's what
what
it would be
happened
like.
to
She
Rose Kennedy, who was a fucking Kennedy. But because she was a woman who liked to party a little much, her parents were like, yeah, get them a sane asylum. And they
well,
lobotomized
she
her
did
at like
have
20.
yeah. Yeah, she did have some mild mental issues. From what it sounds like, most likely she was kind of, they called her prone to rages. But you don't know, like, does that mean she was actually prone to rages, or does that mean that she just didn't take your shit
Exactly. I
and
think it's
wouldn't
that
let
she
you
just couldn't
push
take
her
your shit.
around?
I don't think she
And
was
so,
truly like bipolar raging out on people. I think
right, so then
they
they
highly
were,
expected to act a very certain way, giving her status in life. She did not want to act that way. They fucking lobotomized her. And this shit,
yeah, and that was right around the time that the Kennedys were coming very, very
yeah,
popular in the public eye,
yep,
and they were starting to run for office and starting to like get a political career off of the ground. So yeah, they took her to the doctor, and the doctor was like, "Yeah, best thing to do is, smush her brains around a little bit. Let's see if that helps." It either helps or it doesn't. And they were like, "I will take that bet." And then they
yep,
stuck her in another asylum and left her there
yep.
until she died. And nobody mentioned her. Nobody went. Oh, here we go. Nobody went to visit her. Anything. All right. Domestic trouble, religious excitement, um, business anxieties,
What does that mean?
death of friends, per puperial. I don't even know what that means. Disappointed love, overexertion, vicious indulgences, spiritualism, because this is at a time where
Huge. Yeah,
like woo
spiritualism is huge.
science,
Yeah,
yeah, it's coming up hard study. Basically, she's a learned woman. Physical injury, change of life, sunstroke, um
oh,
intemperance, which just means like she was a little moody,
yeah.
novel reading, fear, brain fever, epilepsy, paralysis, hereditary, and unknown.
Hereditary what? Just hereditary.
Just
Just
they're all crazy.
her cousin went
She
in
gets
one
it
time.
honest.
Okay.
She gets it honest. She gets it honest, And
Yeah.
like I don't know specifically what I don't know if this comes from the psychiatric hospital that this book is about, that Elizabeth went to, but it's like the amount of unknowns on here is like 195. Domestic trouble 33. Religious excitement 32. Business anxiety 16. Vicious indulgences 25. Like epilepsy is like 12. Like that's how many people at that point for those different things. This
Yeah.
was in late 1800s. Supposed exciting causes of insanity in cases admitted since December in the late 1800s. So you could literally just you could
You
be
might as
thrown
well have just
in.
walked in and be like, she got tits. Oh, all right, yeah. She got a
Yeah,
vagina
and the way that
too?
it
Bring her on in.
Yeah, and the way that it worked legally is you had to be taken in on the request of a male figure in your life, and he had to get two doctors to sign off on the fact that you were crazy. But the doctors didn't even have to actually see you
Yeah.
in order to
Like
sign
talk
off on
to
this
your
paperwork.
male.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just all based off of like what your husband or brother or whoever
Yeah.
is saying, and they can come see you, but again, there was no speciality for psychiatry at
And
this
there was no
point.
respect for women. So
There was nothing,
yeah.
and they still thought one of the treatments at this point, this treatment was phasing out, but it was still prevalent. They thought that one of the best treatments was female circumcision,
Oh
that
my
if they just took that away from them, especially in like vicious excitements or any kind of like sexual deviancy,
yeah.
having a higher libido than your husband, being caught masturbating, just chop it right off and you'll never have to deal with it again.
Well, she won't need it anymore. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
exactly. Yep. And then that continues. This movie's in the late 20s, and we were still shocking brains
Of course.
of anyone and everyone.
I I couldn't have lived in these times. Like I just listened to a podcast about witches
No.
the other day. Like my favorite podcast is Time Suck, and he was doing witchcraft. And he was focusing on Western history, European to
Yeah.
American history of witchcraft. And it was just like, I mean, they were basically like, you got a mole, you're a fucking witch. And of course, like 98% of the people accused are fucking women and being burnt at the stake and shit. And it's just like, oh, you like to dance? You're a fucking witch. Killer. And then it was like, once that became too taboo, they're like, well, what are we supposed to do with them now? Then I chuck them in a building. I'm going to chuck them away. Chuck them away in a building. You know, like, fucking A, man.
Yeah. Like you can't like it's just on a word of someone who has no idea what they're talking about. I wouldn't have been able to make it at all because I am actually crazy. Like I'm bipolar. I have auditory and visual hallucinations. Without my medicine, I am up and down. I am seeing shit. Like it is not good. So yeah, take me out of literally this time frame. I'm fucking blind, bipolar. I'm autistic.
We're
I
going down.
I would have been thrown
Yeah.
eventually. Like I didn't get diagnosed with either of these until I got diagnosed bipolar at like 26 or something because I hid
Yeah.
it so well. But eventually it fucking comes out.
Yeah.
You see something, you see me do something weird, you see me freak the fuck out, like you see something that happens and you're like, "Oh, that bitch crazy." Like I would have been locked away so fucking fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Going
fucking
down, bro.
fast.
Going down. Like,
And obviously, I'm not one to go down easy. So I probably would have
oh,
gotten a lobotomy just
you're
because
getting
I'm so fucking
lobotomized.
difficult.
You're
Yeah,
super
I'm so
getting
fucking
lobotomized.
difficult.
I might get sold into like sex slavery because, like I said, I will end up fawning. I don't like like don't hurt me.
Right.
But
Yeah,
so,
I am
but
too
yeah, I'm
loud
not gonna
and
have a good life. I won't end up in a good place. Mm-mm. Nope.
no, I mean, I guess that would be obviously the best option was just okay, I don't know what's happening. Like at that point,
You
just
don't
take
know
it.
that you don't
The
know.
whole frontal cortex, just take it. And then I don't even know, then I get to just eat pudding for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
Like
but what if
if I was in that situation in the late 1800s, just take it. Just
yeah,
take it.
but what if it didn't actually take? What if it just trapped you? Like to where you do know what's happening. You just can't communicate that shit. And now
Don't
you're
okay, that's one of
thinking
my
like
biggest
shit,
fears. It's
right?
called locked
Like,
in syndrome.
yeah,
Locked in syndrome is one of my biggest fucking fears.
yeah,
And we don't understand it. I'm
exactly.
like,
You don't know they were
Like
that
top
did
5.
different things to everybody. You hope you went gone, and you're just drooling in a corner and don't know what the fuck's happening to
That's
you.
why I said
That
best
did
case
not happen for
scenario.
everybody. Like
That's
locked
why I
in.
said best case scenario.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, just scramble them.
Oh,
and
I'm going best case scenario.
get me out.
I think I'd rather be burned at the stake because I'm guaranteed a death at least. It'd be a horrific death, but I'm like guaranteed I'm gonna die. There won't be any chance of locked in syndrome or anything. Like
I probably would have just did it myself.
Just die. Like
yeah, I probably just would have did it myself.
Yeah,
like jumped out a window or something. Because like bipolar highs and then the super lows, I probably just would have. I'm out.
Thanks.
Yeah, during that time.
Oh man, the moment I found
thank
someone
you.
was like, "Oh, you're acting a little weird," I'd be like, "Oh, am I? I'm out. Goodbye.
Bye." Or I'm going to live in the woods.
Oh,
because it's something you could actually do back then. Become the fucking bog witch.
That's true.
Forest.
You become the witch in the forest where people just fear you, and you're just like,
get off my lawn.
Growing my own beets.
I'll talk to the to the birds.
Yeah.
Somebody roll up on my little cabin and I'm just out screaming in the woods.
Yeah. Just you gotta make
yourself
look unfriendly enough that like they leave you alone, but like kind of sane enough that they just don't. They also don't call anybody on you. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You got to be like inconspicuous.
I'll make moonshine. I could figure out how to make moonshine, and then you can't kill the moonshine lady,
right? You need the moonshine. All right, so that was the Changeling.
Oh my god,
it's good stuff. Good watch.
Yeah, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So thanks for watching, you guys. We'll see you next week.